Evening, everyone. My name is Michelle Jones, and welcome to Preserving Pomegranate Juice, Jelly, Molasses, and more. For today's Master Food Preservers, I'm your MC, Michelle Jones. We have our QA and moderators, Trish Passing, Marina Shea, and your presenters, Henry Shaw, Marina Shea, and Bobby Green. This program is being recorded. A link to this slide deck and class handout with recipes will be provided to attendees when they complete the post-class survey. We have some Zoom housekeeping rules. Please keep your mics muted when not speaking. During live questions, unmute and speak or raise your Zoom hand. At any time, type your questions or comments in the Zoom Q&A feature. Open this from the menu bar at the bottom of your Zoom screen. If you don't see Q&A on your bar, click More. Then select Q&A from the pop-up menu. Again, during open discussion, just speak up. Who are we? The UC Master Food Preserver online delivery program is a community outreach online-based grant-funded volunteer program within the University of California Division of Agriculture and Natural Resources. We provide up-to-date research-based information on food safety and preservation. What is our mission? To keep Californians safe and well as they use culturally appropriate research-based practices to safely preserve food in the home, reducing food waste, increasing food security, and providing engaging ways for Californians to explore healthy food. Okay, we have this disclaimer here. I'm not going to read the entire thing to you, but I do want to state this. We won't read you this fine print, but just to emphasize that we are all volunteers and cannot speak for the University of California and do not endorse or oppose any specific organization, service, or product. So, for example, if we show a specific piece of equipment, we are not endorsing that specific product or brand. Here's today's agenda, and we're going to be getting aerial seeds out of pomegranate done by Henry, freezing aerials by Marina, dehydrating aerials by Marina, juicing aerials by Henry, preserving juice by Henry, making pomegranate jelly by Bobby, and making pomegranate molasses by Henry. Let's get started. And now we have Henry.
Yeah, sorry, I'm having trouble unmuting. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Great. So it's pomegranate season. Pomegranates are a beautiful seasonal jewel-like fruit native to Afghanistan and Iran, but now they're grown all around the world. The name pomegranate comes from the Latin pomum, meaning apple, and granatum, meaning seeded. So literally it means it's a seeded apple. And as you can see in the picture in the lower left, they're full of seeds. The good part is the juice. The juice is in this fleshy sac surrounding the seed, and that sac and seed is called an aril. So although we call them pomegranate seeds, really what we're after is the aril. They're seasonal. They're ripe in the northern hemisphere, at least, from about mid-September through December. But you can buy the juice commercially these days year-round. It's stored. There's many different varieties. We think of pomegranates as having these bright red arils, the seeds, but in fact they come in almost every color. You can get clear ones. There are pink ones. There are yellow ones. You don't see these commercially. The variety you see sold commercially is the variety called Wonderful, but there are literally hundreds of different varieties. And if you go to a farmer's market, or if you happen to be lucky enough to live near a persimmon, a pomegranate farm, you can find these rarer types. The Wonderful variety is actually it tastes great, but it does have sort of a woody, hard seed inside the aril. There are other varieties we'll talk about a little bit, which have a very soft seed, so that they're not nearly as noticeable. And for some applications, those are the things you want to seek out. Next. So you saw the agenda. The first thing is how the hell do you get these arils out of a pomegranate? It's sort of a daunting task. Next, if you've never done it before. But before you start doing that, you want to, clean your workspace. You want to wash your hands, clean your countertops, clean your tools, wash your produce, and wash your electronics. If you're going to be using your phone or your laptop while you're preparing things, you want to clean that because electronic devices actually are micro magnets. You touch them all the time. You place them in places that aren't sanitary. So do clean your electronic devices. Next. So the question at hand is, how do you separate the arils from the whole fruit? The white pith and the membrane separating these little jewel-like seeds are bitter, and you want to try and remove them so that you end up with a nice, clean, separated product like you see on the right there. Click. And there's two basic methods for extracting arils, and we'll go over both of those. Next. Just a safety warning or a hygiene warning. You are going to splash some pomegranate juice around. So you want to wear a dark apron. Pomegranate juice can stain. Next. The first method, it's very simple and kind of satisfying. You slice your pomegranate in half, like that, and you hold it loosely in your hand, separating your fingers a little bit, and then you whack it with something like a wooden spoon or a mallet. This is pretty fast, but the separation of the arils from the white pith is not quite as effective as the next method. So you'll spend a little more time cleaning up those arils in the next step. Next. You can actually buy devices that are supposed to mimic your hand here. You see this plastic screen, the red plastic screen that's kind of like your hand. You put your halved pomegranate on top of that screen, sitting in a bowl, and then there's a rubber dome that fits over the pomegranate, and then you whack that dome with your spoon. We've tried this, and it didn't go any easier, and it's still kind of messy. So I think just using your hand is perfectly satisfactory. Next. The other method is a little more tedious. So you cut the top and bottom off the pomegranate. And you'll notice that it's almost like a citrus. There are segments that are separated by membranes. You want to score the peel of the pomegranate along those membranes, and then split it apart along the score lines. And then you sort of massage the seeds out, as you'll see in a second, out of those segments. And it helps to do this underwater. And if you do it underwater, ideally the white pith and the white membranes will float to the surface. And but you're going to spend some time cleaning this up anyway. Next. In both cases, you're going to have to, put your separated arils in a bowl with some water, break them apart. Any things that are stuck together or stuck to membrane or pith, you just pick it apart, and that will mostly float. You can skim the floating white bits with a slotted spoon. And then once you've done that, cleaned up all the white stuff, drain them in a colander and let them dry on a paper towel. Next. And you end up, ideally, with this beautiful product. Next. And now Marina is going to tell you what to do with them, how you can preserve them by freezing and dehydrating. Take it away, Marie.
All right, let's talk about freezing. And I'm going to actually talk to you about the two easiest ways of preserving food. It's really freezing and drying. And everyone has a freezer and you can use an oven or a food dehydrator. It's very simple.
So let's talk about freezing first. And it really is the way that you would freeze any kind of berry, or if you've ever frozen like blueberries or raspberries, you just want to take your clean product and put it in a single layer on a sheet or a little pan that fits in your freezer, comfortably and flat, and just drop them into your freezer, give them a little while to freeze up, and then when they are nice and hard, you can just bag them. And depending on how quickly you plan to use them, you can put them into a freezer Ziploc baggie. Do try to suck as much air out of it as possible. Air is always the enemy of food preservation. If you happen to have something like a food saver machine with the thicker plastic, that will probably keep your product a little longer, and you can freeze them in the quantities that you may want to use them. Ideally, you use them within a year. A frozen pomegranate seed isn't going to come back when it's thawed in that same kind of crunchy, nice way. So you might or might not really want to be scattering them onto like a salad. Frankly, if it's way off the time of year, people will be probably a little a little weirded out by that. But if you were going to bake with them, if you were going to wind up juicing them or something, it's a perfectly nice way to preserve that good flavor. That's really all there is to freezing. Let's go on to the next slide. So dehydrating, the arils, when they're dehydrated, are called anardana, and they are very common in Indian and Middle Eastern cuisine. They have a nice concentrated kind of sweet sour flavor. I hadn't ever thought about dehydrating them, but when we started looking into ways to preserve pomegranates, this came up. So it's pretty simple. Let's go forward. So you want to start again with your clean, firm arils. And again, I like the soft-seeded varieties if you can get a hold of that. Parfianca is, one example. It just makes that nice soft, chewy center. And you want to, again, spread your arils onto a single layer on your trays. Now, the tip here is, whether you're using mesh or solid, it's nice to rub just a very light coat of cooking oil on your silicone or on your plastic trays or mesh, because that'll help keep these from sticking, and these will get sticky. In fact, let's go to the next slide. I suggest that you dehydrate them, but you see I started and did it in two different ways. On the top picture here, you can see I just put the arrow straight onto the mesh. I actually think you probably want to start on a solid tray, just because it's simpler to handle it when they're wetter, and then move them to a mesh tray for quicker drying once they get just a little bit more less tacky. The dehydration is anywhere in the range of 110 to 140, and that's a pretty broad range. I try to crank it up at the beginning because I can, and then I'll tend to lower it later on. You don't want to go much higher than that. You don't really want to cook them. Notice that there's a very wide range of time, and I know that can be frustrating, but every dehydrator is different. The space around it, the temperature that you're at, how wet your product was when it went in. Just keep an eye on it. Again, I like to start on the solid tray and then move to the open mesh. When are they done? Again, you've got a lot of leeway here, but you want to get them as dry as it takes to have the seeds no longer stick to each other. All right, next. So when you think that they seem to all be done, you want to let them cool down, and then you immediately want to store them in an airtight jar. That can be glass or plastic, but you want them to cool down first, because if you seal them up, that heat will help make them moist again. And if you let them cool down, you should be able to then just put them into a jar, but you don't want to leave them out so that they can get all rehydrated from the room again. Now, the step 5 is important. You want to condition your dried fruit. And this would be true, frankly, of any dried fruit that you're doing, which is once you've put your dried product into a sealed jar, just shake it up, every day for like about a week or 10 days. And what that's doing is allowing the moisture in each of the arils to sort of equilibrate with all of the other ones, so you can see what your total moisture is. And if you find that they're starting to be sticky with each other, it means that you did not sufficiently dehydrate the entire batch, and you want to just put it back on the tray and give it a little bit more dehydration time, and then start over again. But then once they're done, you label and date it, store it in a cool, dark place, and it's best consumed in a year. The little tip is that you can put a little packet of food grade silica gel into your dehydration jars, and that will help maintain your dryness. You can order like packs of 100 of them, off of Amazon for very little. So if you find yourself doing a fair amount of dehydration, that's useful. And then for using them, next slide, you can literally just sprinkle them on things. There are recipes that call for them to be incorporated in it. And you can also powder the sufficiently dried arils into just this nice pink powder, which is like, kind of sour. There are a fair number of recipes that actually call for a teaspoon or tablespoon or so of this anodana powder. Basically, you're going to sub it in for sour, sweet things, lemon, lime, tamarind, sumac, amchur, any of those kinds of sort of sweet, sour flavors. And that's it, very simple. So I'm going to turn it back over to Henry, although, do you want to take any questions at this point?
Yeah, why don't we see if there's any questions? We got a couple of minutes.
Yes, and we do. So we have a question from Lynn, and she's asking, are silica gels the same as oxygen absorbers?
No, they're different. Silica gels absorb moisture, and then there are other chemicals that are used to absorb oxygen. Here we want to keep the moisture content down. If they rehydrate, if these have a lot of sugar in, and sugar is what's called hygroscopic. It absorbs water from the air. So if you live, particularly if you live in a humid region, they will get wet again. So the silica gel helps stop that. And you don't want them to get wet because that can lead to microbial growth.
And that was really it. There was perhaps, if I think from other classes, somebody asked, why is air the enemy when you're preserving food?
Depends how you're preserving it. If you're freezing it, then air can lead to freezer burn, which is just the growth of that sort of hoarfrost on your fruit that you're trying to preserve. It can also lead to oxidation, as Trish wrote out in the chat. Oxidation isn't so much a food safety issue, it's more of a food quality issue. It just doesn't taste as good. It can lead to rancidity in oils, discoloration of fruits, and it just makes it less palatable. And it also is a beauty issue. We're all familiar with bananas and apples that turn brown. You leave them out in the air. They're just not as appetizing looking. We'll talk a little bit about that when we talk about preserving the juice and how we add an antioxidant to keep the color.
And one more question. After dehydrating wonderful arils, are they bitter?
Nope. No, they're just nice. They're kind of like chewy sour raisins. They're concentrated pomegranate flavor. There are actually some cultures that dry the pomegranate skins and in some Indian dishes, and that I think is bitter. I have to say I did not go there, but they can be eaten apparently. But the arils are just fine.
And that is it for questions.
Okay. So we're going to turn that down. That's good. So next is how do you how do you get the juice out of the arrows? So basically you have to crush the arrows to release the juice. So that was a little video of putting them in a blender. You don't want to puree them, but you just want to do it long enough to crush the air and break open the arrows. If you don't have a blender, you can use an immersion blender, one of these hand wand blenders that you put into a pot. You could also seal them in a Ziploc bag and run a rolling pin over them, or mash them in a bowl with a potato masher. It's a little bit messy. Once you've got them mashed, you want to put them in a colander and strain them through the colander. Press on the residue to extract as much juice as you can. Some people have tried to use a steam juicer. Some people love it. Other people who have used it says that you get low extraction and the juice cooks. It discolors and turns brown, and you lose some of the fresh flavor. I have not tried using a steam juicer. I think I will try at some point, but just putting it in a blender works fine. A tip is that you can use previously frozen arrows. That helps to break down the membranes of the arrows themselves, and you get better juice extraction, just as you do with pretty much every other fruit. Next. And don't throw away your pulp. You can infuse commercial vinegar with the pomegranate pulp. If you use a white vinegar, it makes a beautiful, red, fruity flavored vinegar. You can follow any reputable recipe for making fruit infused vinegars. You do want to store it in the refrigerator, though. Next. So the colander got out most of the big chunks of the ground up seeds. You want to further clarify the juice by passing it through a fine mesh strainer. And as you can see, I'm worrying the pulp through the strainer here. And if you want to make an even clearer juice for making jelly, you want to filter it through a jelly bag or layers of multiple layers of a cheesecloth. And that'll make a pretty clear juice. If you want to help preserve the color, you can add about 1/4 teaspoon of ascorbic acid. That's a vitamin C to every quart of the juice, and vitamin C is an antioxidant, and it will help preserve the pigments in the juice, retaining that nice color. Okay. Next. And what do you do with it? If you want to preserve the juice for use further in the year, the best way to do it is to freeze it. You want to freeze your juice in freezer-safe containers, making sure you leave enough headroom to accommodate the expansion as the juice freezes. It is possible to water bath or atmospheric steam can process your pomegranate juice to make a shelf-stable product. It doesn't have to be frozen, but processed juice tends to turn brown and it has sort of a cooked flavor. So freezing is the preferred method. If you want to try canning it, again, you want to add about 1/4 teaspoon of vitamin C to each quart of juice. Put the juice in sterilized jars because we're not going to process it for very long. We're only going to process it for 5 minutes if you live at sea level, in 10 minutes if you live at higher elevations. So that's not enough to sterilize the jars. Process them for 5 minutes and hopefully sealed. But freezing is the preferred method. Next. Now, Bobby's going to tell us what to do with the juice. One of the things you can do is make pomegranate jelly. And she's going to give you a low sugar recipe for making pomegranate jelly. The handout that you're going to get also has a recipe for a traditional high sugar jelly. Take it away, Bobby.
Thank you, Henry. It was nice to see you, how much work you go to. It was validating to see you get all those aerials out of that fruit because I do spend some time on it myself. I'm happy to be here tonight to present this, and mainly because I absolutely love pomegranate jelly. It's the best jelly that you can get. And so right here, get right to it. We have a list of our ingredients. There's not a lot in it. Pomegranate juice, calcium water, honey, lemon juice, and pomona pectin. You can use a different pectin. The pomona pectin allows you to use less sugar or even no sugar if you want to do that. It uses a calcium base rather than using sugar to thicken your jelly. You have all of your equipment over here. I like to get all my equipment out ahead of time and the ingredients and be ready to put it together. There's nothing worse than getting in the middle of preserving food and then not having what you need. Next slide, please. Here we have calcium powder, and that's what the difference is with the pomona pectin. There's a regular pectin that uses the sugar for the gel activity. Half a cup of water, and we keep the unused portion of the solution in a refrigerator. Next slide, please. You're going to use a boiling water canner or atmospheric steamer canner to preserve this jelly. And you'll heat your jars to 180 Fahrenheit in simmering water and keep the jars warm until filling. You'll use new lids. Always use a new lid. The rings we reuse, but the lids we only use them once. And then wash and dry those and check them over. You don't want to use rusty or corroded rings. Next slide, please. You're going to use 4 cups of the pomegranate juice, and you can get that commercially if you prefer. 4 teaspoons of calcium water. You're going to mix that well. And here we are pouring that together. Next slide, please. You can use 1/2 to 1 cup of honey. It's one thing I like about this recipe is we use honey instead of sugar. 3 to 4 teaspoons of your pectin powder. You'll get a firmer or a softer gel, depending on which you use, 3 or 4 teaspoons, and set that aside. Next slide, please. You'll heat your juice mixture. You'll want to get that to a full boil and add your mixture. And you're going to just stir that vigorously for 1 to 2 minutes to make sure that it's mixed well. You will skim the foam off the top. You don't have to throw that away. That foam can be delicious on toast or something. You're going to check for the gel by dripping a small amount of the jelly onto a cool plate, and it'll immediately gel up if it has worked for you like you want it to. Next slide, please. And here we have all the processes. We're going to fill the jars to get ready to process them. The jars are going to be warm. You always want to work with warm jars. You want a 1/4 inch of head space at the top. Next, you'll debubble the product. When you debubble it, you're simply putting some kind of an instrument into the jar to move any air that might be stuck at the bottom up. You'll wipe the rims with a damp cloth, the top and the rims with a damp cloth. Place your lids and tighten the rings finger tight. You're going to process for 10 minutes or 15 minutes in some cases. I use a boiling water steam canner, but you can process in a water bath. Next, please. Okay, good, thank you. Finally, you want to let it rest on the countertop for 12 to 24 minutes. You'll remove the jars from the canner. You're going to just go straight up, over, and drop them down. You don't want to tip either way. You'll have a cloth that you'll set them on to prevent any kind of breakage, and let them rest there. Don't bother them at all for 12 to 24 hours before checking the seals and removing the rings. So the next day when you do that, if you do happen to take a ring off and it's not sealed, that's good information for you. You'll either put it in your refrigerator and use it right away or reprocess it. You're going to date and label your jars always. And I did want to say that if you're processing at least 10 minutes or more, you don't have to sterilize everything ahead of time like we used to do. Now, if we process for 10 minutes or more, that sterilizes it during the process. All you have left to do is share and enjoy your jelly. And I would argue that it's the best jelly that you can make. It's absolutely delicious. I think we have a few minutes in case we have questions.
Yes, and we do. So Jasmine is asking, can citric acid be substituted for ascorbic acid to maintain color?
No,
I do that.
no,
Oh, go ahead, Henry.
no, the
No.
citric acid isn't as strong an antioxidant. You want to use
Right.
citric acid when you want to acidify a borderline acid product like tomatoes or white peaches. Um, but for maintaining color, ascorbic acid excuse me, ascorbic acid is much better.
Right. It's for the juice, isn't it, Henry, that you would put something to, or you use ascorbic acid then too?
I'd use ascorbic acid in the juice
Both?
to preserve the
Yeah.
color. You use citric acid when you want to
Gotcha.
ensure that your tomatoes are acid enough to can.
Right. Thank you for that.
Okay, and Jasmine asks about the when you blending to get the juice. I've heard blending can make it more bitter because of the arrow case. Is that true?
I haven't noticed it.
Not in my experience. No.
You don't want to puree it. You don't want to turn it into completely pulverize the seeds. You want to break apart the membrane that's holding the juice against the seed in the arrow. And it doesn't take much. But I don't know if you could tell when I was straining stuff, there's still, big half seeds and whole seeds in the pulp if you do it right. I noticed there was a question about a Vitamix. Vitamixes are frightening because they will puree an elephant, they'll puree rocks. So you want to not overprocess it in a Vitamix.
And usually you can pulse a Vitamix. So
Yeah.
doing it very gently, just like you can in a processor, a food processor. So pulsing it if you
Yeah.
have a Vitamix. Otherwise, you will get a
Right.
lovely arrow and seed puree.
Which will be very hard to clarify.
And where do you find calcium powder? So the Pomona's pectin requires that you add the calcium powder, but where do you buy that?
Well, the packet comes with it. I buy things on Amazon, and I'm not trying to plug them, but the packet comes with Pomona uh, pectin. So that's where I get it. I guess if you were doing bigger amounts and you didn't want to buy the packages like that, you might get some calcium powder someplace else.
It's supplied with pomona pectin. It's part of the
Right.
product.
And Janae asks, why do you always need to use new lids? What is the rationale for that?
Well, your lids are sealing because you have that rubber substance, the ring around the top, and that's sealing to your jar. And so if it's already been used, it has had some destruction to it. I've heard of people using them more than once, and I've read it on the internet, but I personally have never experienced, but then I haven't tried it. They're
Yeah,
made to only use one time.
once you've sealed it, that nice bed, even bed of polymer, it's gooey kind of stuff, gets deformed, permanently deformed, and
Right,
you will never get as good a seal. There are lids that are specifically made to be reused. We're not talking about those kind of lids.
right. Good.
So I've always used a cold press like you might use for citrus, not the rotating type. We cut the pomegranates in half and then press. Will we will typically turn into jelly or freeze for juice. I down and didn't mention.
You broke up there a bit, Pat.
Yeah, I didn't hear the question.
Uh,
You're using a citrus
so
press?
the question is using a citrus press versus for juice versus using uh, using the methods that you described.
I've
I see.
used a citrus press, and what the difference is you have to ask yourself how many pomegranates do you have because you lose a lot of the juice when you use the citrus press. You'll get double the juice by taking care of them by um, removing the areoles and then juicing it. Another thing you can do is freeze those areoles before you juice them and thaw them out, and that's going to release the juice easier. When I used the citrus press, I had boxes of pomegranates. I had so many I didn't know what to do with them all. I used the citrus press. It was easy, and I got what I needed, but I don't always have that many pomegranates to be wasteful with them.
I agree.
And would
This
a
is what sort of this.
squeezo
What are
work?
these stand mixer stand presses?
Yeah,
Like at a bar, what a bar, yeah.
Same thing I use for my oranges and lemons and things.
Would a squeezo work to juice arils?
A squeezo?
A
What's
squeezo.
a,
I'm not
what's
familiar
a,
with that.
I'm not familiar either. What's a squeezo? Whoever asked that can unmute and
Yeah,
answer.
it's Susan, if you want to come off of mute and inform us what a squeezo is. And I'm trying to look it up right now. It reminds me of like a where you can put different kinds of grates like into a cheese grater thing, where you put the hard like a Romano or Parmesan. You have
Oh,
different kind of grates and you kind of twirl it around. And it's a squeezo strainer, the original food and tomato mill.
Yeah,
Oh,
you can't, I figured out how to
Yes.
unmute.
Yeah.
You can also use them to do berries. They come with different screens and different centers.
Might work. I've no
yeah, that would be
experience.
fun to try.
Try. Why don't you try it and report back to us?
Okay.
I'm just afraid it might get clogged up with seeds. I don't know how. With
Yeah.
Bill he just mentioned freezer jam, which is
Mhm.
a great and easy way to make jam. And Nancy asks, how long can you keep the whole pomegranates in the refrigerator? I have a tree that produced a large quantity this year. Also, I used a potato ricer yesterday to juice. Time consuming, but it worked great.
Yeah, it's like
So
that's like using a potato masher.
how
We
long
keep
can
them
you
for
keep them in the refrigerator?
they'll last for a couple of months. They will start dehydrating. The flavor actually supposedly matures. That gets better the longer you keep them. They don't get any riper, but they get more complex apparently in flavor.
So I did wanted
wanted
to say one thing about aging your pomegranates, though, which is they can become much more difficult to de-seed when the outer skin gets sort of almost hard and leathery. And so if you see them kind of getting to that very, very dry stage, the fruit is fine, but it can be a lot more difficult because there's not the pliability when you're kind of working the arils out. So you might want to just pull the arils out when you can and freeze them or in some other way store them.
Also, if
And
the pomegranate is cracked at all, and you can see this one's got a crack in it, you want to process those pretty quickly because they will start to get moldy there.
And
And a hint,
Therese asks, can you make fruit leather out of molasses?
I think you'd probably, I don't think there's enough pectin in it or fiber in it to make a good leather. You could easily mix it with some applesauce or something, something else that has more fiber and pectin in it than the juice. And a hint, how do you tell when a pomegranate is ripe? I don't know if you can see this, but unripe pomegranates are round, spherical. When they get ripe, they start to get polygonal. They get these flat sides, and that's where the membranes are coming up and hitting the skin. So once you start seeing that, the pomegranates are ripe.
Kind of like when you showed in the video and you're cutting it and you could
Cutting,
see like a star, yeah, it was
right,
beautiful.
right. But they start out pretty much round like a softball, and then they develop this kind of flat sides with the ridges where the membranes come up.
And Janae is asking, is there a concern about eating cracked pomegranates that have cracked on the tree since you don't know how long they've been Correct.
I would inspect them and make sure that they're not obviously, deteriorating. They're not moldy, they're not mushy, they're not discolored.
Sometimes they'll be kind of dried out, and you just remove those when you're going through.
Yeah. We have more time for questions at the end, so why don't we go on and make some pomegranate molasses. So, it's great to have juice, but the juice takes up a lot of space in your freezer. So one way to concentrate that is to make pomegranate molasses. So all pomegranate molasses is simmered down pomegranate juice. You reduce pomegranate juice to about a quarter of its original volume. So if you start with 4 cups of pomegranate juice, you'll end up with a cup of pomegranate molasses. And this is a simple recipe. Add about 1/3 of a cup of white sugar and some lemon juice to 4 cups of pomegranate juice, and you put it on the stove and you put it on low. Next slide. Heat the mixture until the sugar is all dissolved, and you want to keep it at a very low simmer. You don't want it to boil because boiling will discolor the syrup, and it'll taste cooked. It won't have the fresh fruit flavor that you want to have. Continuously stir it, or frequently stir it, until you've reduced it to about a quarter of the original volume, and it will be syrupy. If you click again, you can see if you draw your finger across a spoonful of it, it will actually leave a path, and it's sticky. And as it cools, the syrup will get even thicker. It takes about, it's easy, but it's time consuming. It takes about 2 to 3 hours to reduce 4 cups of molasses down to a cup of 4 cups of juice down to a cup of molasses. Next. Pour the molasses into a sterilized jar, and you can store it in the refrigerator for up to a year. It may have a tendency to crystallize, just as honey crystallizes. You can make it into a syrup again just by putting it in a pan of warm water, changing it, keeping the water warm, and those sugar crystals will redissolve. Pomegranate molasses is a staple in Middle Eastern cooking. You can use it in salad dressings. You can use it to marinate meats, so lamb marinated in pomegranate molasses, delicious. You can use it as a dessert topping, and we have a couple of bonus recipes in the handout as to how to use it. Next slide. You can make pomegranate molasses using just juice with no additions, no sugar or no lemon juice, but the sugar will reduce the amount of time it takes to reduce the syrup down to the juice down to a syrup because you're adding more sugar. The lemon juice is also optional, but it helps retain color and adds some flavor and tartness. I haven't tried it, but it seems like you could use a slow cooker on a low setting, keeping it at just under boiling. It might be a good way to get away from the stove and reduce the juice to a syrup. Next. And that's it. We have time for questions.
Yeah. Susan has a question. Can the molasses be canned, like on a water bath or a steam canner?
I think you would lose the fresh flavor if you did that. And that's the whole point of not boiling it. Even though you're heating it for hours, it still comes out pretty vibrant. The other thing you can do with pomegranate juice is make grenadine. If you like Shirley Temples or tequila sunrises, grenadine is simply sweetened pomegranate juice, either just juice that's unsweetened or partially boiled down. You can boil it down to maybe half the original volume. And it's much nicer than the grenadine you buy in the store. And there's a recipe for grenadine in the handout too.
There are no questions in the Q&A box. So if you have any question, you can type it in there.
Anybody got a
You
favorite
can
thing to do with
also
pomegranates?
raise your hand.
I look forward to pomegranate season because they're only available for a couple of months. And if you have the opportunity, there are a number of, I don't know where people are from, if you're anywhere near the Sierra foothills or the east side of the Central Valley, there are a number of heirloom pomegranate farms out there, and they're fascinating to see the variety of pomegranates that exist. UC Riverside actually has a pomegranate breeding program. They're trying to, you know, maintain heirloom varieties and breed new varieties.
All right, so there's a question about using a food mill for juicing.
I've tried it. It's very messy. It
And
splatters.
where can we locate these recipes?
You will get a handout with the recipes and well, you'll get a link to a folder where you can get the recipes and the slides after if you complete the questionnaire at the end of the program.
Mhm. And another one about the molasses. Even though the flavor is reduced, can you still can grenadine or molasses? I know it's not the best maybe for flavor. I'm just talking safety, sometimes as for juice. Same times as for juice.
It would be like for a juice, only you're making a simple syrup. Um, so I don't know of an approved recipe, um, so I can't recommend that. I could do some
Do you
research, but typically you want to store it in the refrigerator.
do you ever mix the pomegranate with other fruits?
For what purpose?
So
So
Denise
you can make a
doesn't mention.
grenadine syrup using black currant juice or other juices. Certainly, you can mix other juices and freeze them. One of the problems these days with commercial pomegranate juice is unscrupulous vendors are mixing, adulterating it with other juices, like apple juice, cheaper juices like apple juice and grape juice. So there's actually research into how do you identify, uh, you know, pure pomegranate juice from adulterated pomegranate juice, and it has to do with the types of sugars and acids that are present. Uh, the sugar in pomegranate is a mixture of fructose and glucose, whereas in a specific ratio, and the acidic part of pomegranate is dominantly citric acid with a little bit of malic acid. Malic acid is the acid in apples. Uh, when they adulterate it with grape juice, you get tartaric acid, so you can identify that somebody's. And if you get a lot of malic acid, then it's apple juice that they've adulterated it with.
Okay, Susan is asking, has anyone freeze-dried arils or juice?
I would guess probably, but I don't know the answer to that. I have not. We'll have to ask one of our master food preservers who has a freeze dryer to see if he's tried it.
And Denise wrote back and said she was thinking of mandarin juice to combine mandarin juice with the pomegranate juice.
Um,
And she had
to-
she was just asking about adding it and perhaps making these recipes, I'm assuming.
I wanted to note that Elkie Duffy said in the Q&A that their favorite pomegranate recipe is a sorbet made with 2 parts pomegranate juice and 1 part OJ and 1 part simple mint syrup. Sounds pretty wonderful.
And Janae is asking, can you please repeat how to know when fruit is ripe and when to pick it? Can you pick it early and let it ripen off of the tree?
they will not ripen, that is, get sweeter off the tree. They stop making sugars. You can tell if it's ripe if it makes sort of a go thump your unripe pomegranates and they're dull. If you thump a ripe pomegranate, it has sort of a metallic sound almost is how it's described. And they develop flat sides. Let's find this. See how it's got a flat surface there, a flat surface there, a flat surface there. When they're unripe, they don't have those. When they're ripe, they have those. And of course, if they start to split, then you need to pick them. And in some cases, you'll know they're ripe when the rats have come and the squirrels have come and eaten them all.
Do you cut them off the tree or how do you remove the fruit from the tree?
I don't know what you do, Bobby. I just get clippers and clip the stem. You want to leave a little bit of the stem. You don't want to perforate the skin. The danger is if you try and pull it, you'll rip some of the skin off and leave it on the tree.
I take scissors or shears out with me and cut them off because they are hard to pull off.
It is easier than persimmons, that's for sure. But I would just take it because some of them will just snap off. The pomegranates will, but you try and tug on those persimmons, and man, that Fuyu persimmon is just hanging onto that tree. So Ashley has a comment. You can water bath, can some fruits in juice, like canning using white grape juice in place of water when canning something like apples or grapes. So, can you use pomegranate juice as the liquid for canning other fruits?
I would think so because pomegranate juice is actually fairly acidic. It's almost always has a pH below 3.8. It goes down into pHs of 2. So that's quite acidic. When you're canning fruits, you can just use a sugar syrup to can acid fruits. So I think, yes, you could. You could use apple juice. You could use pomegranate juice, which is going to be less sweet, but more acid than the apple juice. Of course, it's got to
And
color unless you have white pomegranate juice and sought out white or pink pomegranate arils, it's going to stain everything red.
and do different colors of pomegranates taste different?
Yes. I
Yes.
have a pink pomegranate tree, and I'm a little disappointed that I didn't get the crimson, which I will get that soon. The pink is not near as that tart, that flavor that the crimson has. So I don't care for the jelly in the same way that I enjoy the crimson jelly.
Yeah, UC Riverside actually has a database of both of all different varieties and with some organoleptic information that is, how does it taste and how acid is it, how sweet is it. So you could go look there. I think that might even be in the handout. Right now, my favorite variety, if you're going to go out and buy one to plant, is a Parfianca, which Marina mentioned. It's highly rated in most taste tests as one of the better tasting pomegranates for the juice, and the seeds are soft. It's like eating the seeds in a seedless watermelon. This is a Parfianca, and we got very large fruit this year.
Do you know of a variety that is clear or that does not stain?
Yes, because I've had them, but I can't give you a name. I'd have to go look it up. But there's a number of white or yellow variety pomegranates. I've just planted a yellow one, but it's only a year old, so it's not bearing. So I don't know.
I'm curious if there are ways that people have used pomegranates that we haven't touched on in this conversation.
Question.
If people might unmute or raise their hand or type it into the Q&A. We're always interested. And I also want to know if anyone's ever tried the skins.
I've tried pomegranate. Can you hear me?
Yes.
My husband's Iranian, and there's something called pheasant, and it's made with pomegranate molasses and walnuts and onions. It looks like a mole, but it's really, really good. And it's called pheasant.
Could you maybe put that in the chat or in the
Q&A.
or in the Q&A so that people can see that how you spell that? That would be great.
Okay, let me see.
That'd
I'm
be
on my
wonderful.
cell phone. I'm trying to-
Oh,
Right. Susan mentions, I make a pomegranate elixir with port and brandy. Lynn says, I put pomegranate seeds in muffins. And Rita mentions, I put in my yogurt or in arroz con leche. Those all sound, my mouth is watering.
Yeah, that all sounds wonderful. We were looking for some baking recipes using the anodana powder, and found a very provocative one that looks like a chocolate meringue cookie that has both powder in it and that you can also add seeds to. But the recipe was odd. I mean, it was a very suspect recipe. It had ingredients listed that weren't then in the instructions, and so we didn't have a chance to try it out. But I have seen a lot of pomegranate seeds in baking, adding them to basically chocolate chip cookies or putting them in various baked products.
I don't know what to talk.
Ashley mentions about she's seen recipes for pomegranate jam that are like jelly, but you just toss the whole areolas in there. I imagine it would be strange to eat, but I'd like to try it just for fun. Any concerns canning it?
I haven't seen an approved recipe for pomegranate jam or preserve. So I don't know. I mean, I assume it'd be like eating a blackberry preserve that you haven't taken the seeds out of. If you tried it, I would try and seek out a soft seeded variety. Otherwise, it's going to be kind of unpleasant.
Would you put the whole seed into a cookie mix? I
Certainly,
suppose you could
I've
try
seen a
it.
lot of recipes that have you do it. And so I think it's probably fine. I think it really depends on how comfortable you are eating the whole seed. If you have if you're peeling your pomegranate and you're crunching some seeds as you go, and that crunchiness is just fine. I'm the kind of person who likes, raspberries because I really like the little seed crunch. Then, I think it's fine. If you find it's distressing to have the seed, then you're going to find the seeds in whatever you cook. And I'm kind of spoiled with the Parfianca variety. But most of the recipes
And
I've seen use it.
Nancy mentions that she made the jelly yesterday and it's yummy. And so it just makes me think of, I have yet to make jelly myself personally, but with Bobby and with others who have said, oh my gosh, it's so good, that makes me want to make it. So thank you for sharing that.
I think Michelle has some closing slides. We're getting sort of the end of our time slot here.
I do. Thank you all so much, Master Food Preservers, for this presentation. All right, for all of our guests today, we have free upcoming UC Master Food Preserver online delivery programs. And for those upcoming events, you can follow us on Eventbrite. And if you'd like to use your cell phone for the QR code, by all means do so. If not, this will also be coming to you via email as well. Upcoming classes, we have core skills, apple butter, and dehydrated apple rings coming up on Saturday, this Saturday, November 8th, from 1 o'clock p.m. to 2 o'clock p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And we have asked a Master Food Preserver online. You have questions about food preservation, we have answers. And that's on Sunday, November 16th, from 4 o'clock p.m. to 5 o'clock p.m. And lastly, we have From Orchard to Table, apple pie filling and freezing apples on Wednesday, November 19th at 6:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And if you want any past classes or recordings, you can use that QR code there, and that will get you to those classes. Want to learn more? Sign up for our monthly newsletter called Save the Season. Like us on Facebook and Instagram. A very active group on social media. And become a Master Food Preserver. Watch the recorded information session, attend the final live online Q&A session on November 20th. Applications are due November 23rd, 2025. And the training is online and the labs are in person. And that'll be starting on January of 2026. And for more information, there's a link below, or you can use the QR code. And we always need feedback and input when you leave this Zoom class tonight. A brief survey will pop up in your browser. Please complete it to help us improve. When you submit it, a pop-up acknowledgement will include the link to this slide deck and the class handout with recipes and tips. Thank you so much for your time and your interest in spending your evening with us. Happy preserving.